Get all the news and controversy of the NFL right here on the Blitz Zone with your hosts, Eric Rosen and Jamie Hickson, as they discuss the hot topics concerning your favorite players and team, the winners, the losers, the big plays, and the big hits from around the league. Right here, only on the Blitz Zone.
Well, as you know, today, ladies and gentlemen, it's Friday, September 11th. 14 years ago on this very day, the worst domestic terrorist attack since Pearl Harbor took place in New York City, Washington, D.C., and in Pennsylvania, resulting in the loss of thousands of people's lives, especially at the World Trade Center, the beacon of economics and finance in Lower Manhattan, that housed people from all different parts of the world who spoke different languages. Anyway, tonight we're dedicating this show to all the thousands upon thousands of people whose lives were lost in this very day, including one particular individual named Frank Garfey. He was an employee at Cantor Fitzgerald, one of the most respected financial institutions that lost over 600 people on that day. He was a loving brother, a son, just an overall good broker too. So Frank, if you're watching from up above, me and my co-host Jamie are dedicating the show to you and so many people whose lives we will never forget, whose lives we will never ever forget in our hearts, our minds, our thoughts, and our prayers. So this one's for you. All right. As they say in life, the show must go on, and so shall we. Welcome back from our 7-month hiatus to the 4th season of the Blitz Zone here on CTV. We are coming to you live from Studio B in Staten Island, New York, and with me, who will join me on this magical carpet journey to Super Bowl 50, is my main man, Mr. Jamie, the sportsman Hickson. Jamie, how you doing?
Physically, I feel terrific, but I got to admit, emotionally, I'm not particularly happy right now. One, because it's been 14 years since that fateful day, and that's the only reason why I'm not very happy right now. I cannot help but feel a little somber about what happened that day. If I could tell a short emphasis on short story right now, that morning I was in the Bronx. I was getting ready to do a show at my old job, and then I turned on the TV, and that's when I saw the image of one of the towers in fumes. And then you know all the rest. That day, I was not able to get back to Staten Island because they had shut down all of the subways and the ferry. So, my coworker, a young woman named Juana Teodorescu, an immigrant from Romania, was kind enough to let me into her home with her parents and her sister. And back then they had a dog. I was never so hurt, so stabbed in the back, and so betrayed like I was that day. And these terrorists did not do anything to me personally, but what they did to our city, our state, our country was cold-blooded, cold-hearted, and downright cowardly. The one shining light from that morning was my friend Juana. She was classy, she was kind, she was open-hearted, she was a decent human being then and now. I'm happy to say that she is still a good friend of mine. She's doing very well for herself. She's a teacher in the CUNY system. She teaches over at Lehman College. She's done very, very well for herself. And on a side note, My dad was supposed to be at the Towers that day. He was supposed to meet with the union because back then he had worked, he had just gotten into retirement from working on the docks at Howland Hook, and he was supposed to meet with the union that day for a meeting. He overslept and missed his meeting by about half an hour, which was when the first tower got hit. Granted, he was only supposed to be on the 17th floor, but I can only think of what could have been. There were two angels that were looking out for us that day. One was Juana, and one was God himself. God is the greatest angel that any human being can ever have on their side. You put your faith in him, he is going to take you so far to where you want to go. All you got to do is have a lot of faith. With that said, I'm going to say to you, are you ready for some football?
Are you kidding me, Jamie? I've been ready for 7 long months, man. I've been cooped up. Granted, you got the other sports there on the television, but man, I gotta have my Thursdays, my Sundays, and my Mondays. I am ready for some football.
I think you forgot Saturday, man. Saturday is the college circuit.
Oh, of course, that too. But man, I'm so excited. So, Jamie, in terms of the 7-month off season. The stories that have been going around. The biggest of them, of course, Deflategate. Mm-hmm. Nobody can forget the AFC title game in which the Patriots beat the Colts handily.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Patriots were accused of deflating the footballs below the league level. Mm-hmm. And then there was the whole Ted Wells report that came out months later. And that pretty much said that Brady supposedly had full knowledge, and that 2 of the equipment managers of the Patriots were colluding with him to make sure that the Colts footballs were deflated below the league level. And those 2 individuals are actually fired from the Patriots organization. And then Brady, months later, was handed down a 4-game suspension by Commissioner Goodell. Then after the suspension was handed down, Tom Brady and his attorneys appealed that decision, as well as the NFLPA, the league, the players' union. And just eight days ago, on September 3rd, Judge Richard Berman overturned the decision that Roger Goodell made, therefore allowing Tom Brady to play in last night's first game of the regular season against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I ask you, Jamie, what was your whole take on this entire fiasco or story?
All I can say is deja vu all over again. You look at the hot water that the Patriots have put themselves in, and it wasn't just Deflategate. It was Spygate, when they were supposedly stealing signs from the Jets. And now we have last night Headset-gate. But that's a story to be told a little bit later. But when you think about it, can we really put this whole thing to rest right now? I mean, which would you consider to be a bigger controversy? The Patriots supposedly deflating footballs, or Ray Rice punching out his then fiance, who is now his wife, or Adrian Peterson almost beating his young son senseless? When you think about it, this whole deflating of footballs thing is really a slap on the wrist compared to some of the other atrocities that have been going on with the NFL. To be quite honest with you, I have no problem with Brady having his suspension lifted, because when you think about it, the NFL may have been a little overzealous with their punishment. I mean, Brady, aside from this, has never gotten into any other trouble outside of the game. So it just goes to show you that I think the league might have made a little too much of a mountain out of a molehill in this one. And quite frankly, I'm glad that this whole thing is over.
Well, Richard Berman did say in his decision that Commissioner Goodell decided to use his own brand of justice. Mm-hmm. So I see where you're going.
This just goes to show you why Roger Goodell has become a really, really horrendous commissioner for that sport. And don't be surprised if some of the other owners, they've said that he's not in any trouble right now with all of the other owners, but don't be surprised if you see Goodell, if he oversteps his bounds in the next controversial issue, whether it's curtains for him. And when I say curtains, I mean done as the commissioner altogether.
It really depends. He would have to do something worse than Deflategate, but we'll see what happens. Right now, with the offseason, stories like that happen, but also players moving from one team to another. You know, you saw a lot, like in Dom Kung Su, for instance, probably the most high-profile free agent, left Detroit, a defense that was in the top 5 the last few years he was there. He goes from the cold weather of the Motor City to the warmth of South Florida, playing for the Miami Dolphins.
I think that's a huge upgrade talent-wise for both sides, not just for the Dolphins, but for Dom Kung Su himself. He's going to be playing with a much better defensive unit in South Florida. If they can solve their quarterback situation, because I still don't like Ryan Tannehill as a quarterback, if they can solve their quarterback situation, I think the Dolphins can be pretty dangerous for the next couple of years. But right now, the AFC is still the Patriots' division to win.
I don't know. I might have a change of heart on that. Considering the move with Ndamukong Suh, you team him up with Cameron Wake, a guy who's been in the league for the last 7 years, good defensive end, good defensive line teammate, and you got Olivier Vernon. Those three are going to be monsters on that defensive line. And so I really like that move. If I'm any quarterback in the AFC East, I'd be crapping my khakis knowing I got those two coming at me left and right.
The Patriots are going to have a few problems with them, no doubt. But if you saw what they did last night, you will know that not only does controversy not faze them, but there comes a time when the opponent isn't really going to faze them either. As professional as they've made themselves sound during interviews about their upcoming opponents, you know that the Patriots are going to be confident going into any contest, whether it's a division opponent or some other opponent. They're going to go out to win.
Another big move that took place, Torrey Smith leaving Baltimore to go to San Francisco. And then other stories, like the 49ers, for instance.
Oh, boy.
Talk about the offseason of hell. You talk about players retiring like Chris Borland after just 1 year at Wisconsin. Patrick Willis retiring after several years. Justin Smith retiring too. And then free agent departures. Mike Iupati, one of their star offensive guards, goes from 49ers to the Cardinals. And Frank Gore goes from the 49ers to the Colts. Originally was signed with the Eagles, but then reneged and then went to the Colts. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, unfortunately, he's not the only person who's gone back on his word previously. And just a few hours ago, I saw that Aldon Smith wound up leaving the 49ers to go to the Raiders.
Well, originally, Aldon Smith was released from the team back in August because of hit-and-run battery charges that he's facing. So he got a 1 year, $8.5 million deal to go across the bay to the Oakland Raiders. And Michael Crabtree also went across the bay too from the 49ers to the Raiders. So, and on top of that, Jim Harbaugh, after 4 years for the team, taking them to the playoffs the first 3 years. Unfortunately, last year they went 8-8. He goes from the 49ers to his alma mater of Michigan. Of course, they lost their first game of the season, 24-17 to Utah.
Trust me, he's in a much better situation right now. I mean, he's back in his birth home of the Midwest. He's got complete control. He's got the backing of the entire student body in Ann Arbor.
The best boosters in all of college football.
But that's not going to mean anything if he doesn't win, and he needs to start winning right now.
I know. But now, the 49ers, they go from one Jim to another. Jim Tom Sewell, who for years was a defensive line coach, who's little experience in NFL Europe as a head coach, will pale in comparison to what he's going to experience in the NFL. He was an interim coach back in 2010 when Mike Singletary was fired in 2017. They did lose that game.
Even though the Niners lost a lot of people, there's still the one shining star on that team, Colin Kaepernick. And I think he's going to still be able to overcome some of the mistakes that he had last year, because last year he had a really horrendous season, a real disappointment of a season by his standards. But as long as he keeps himself upright and healthy, I think the Niners will still be able to be a real pest for a couple of teams this year.
And we speak of new coaches. Tom Sula is just one of 7 new head coaches entering this year. Dan Quinn, former defense coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks, takes Seattle to the Atlanta Falcons, a team that was dead last in total defense, 398 yards they gave up.
Well, they got the right guy for the job right now. I want to see what kind of personnel the Falcons have defensively, because a team is only as good as their guys on defense.
Well, they drafted Vic Beasley out of Clemson. Very good move for their linebacking core. They got Justin Durant in free agency, too. So they got some good defensive players. I think he's going to turn that team around. And then you got John Fox going from his 13 years in the league with both Denver and Carolina, each taking them to a Super Bowl appearance. Now he's going to the Midwest Monsters of the Chicago Bears, hopefully improving that defense with Vic Fangio and Adam Gase, a good offense coordinator he brings along. Just the issue with receivers, that's going to be the problem. Gary Kubiak, 1-year stint as the OC in Baltimore, now goes to the Denver Broncos as the head coach.
Which is pretty interesting considering that Kubiak was John Elway's backup quarterback for 8 years. Now he's John Elway's employee.
Isn't that just what a twist of fate that is? Mm-hmm. And on top of that, you know what? They're going to be going from a more pass-heavy offense to a zone blocking scheme, which has been used in Kubiak's years with the Houston Texans.
And this is a year in transition for the Broncos because their longtime owner, Pat Bowlen, had to step down because he's been battling Alzheimer's disease. So this is a real change in hierarchy for them. But still, Peyton Manning is there. I think he's got another 2 or 3 good years left in him. He's still an elite player and a tremendous player, too.
And then Jack Del Rio. Talk about Denver. He was the defense coordinator for the last 4 years there, 3 years there. Now he goes to the Oakland Raiders. He's the second defense coordinator in the last 3 years from the Denver Broncos to coach in the AFC West.
Well, if we've learned anything about the Raiders, that's the one place where careers go to die. Don't be surprised if you see Jack Del Rio get shown the door after 1 year.
I don't think that's going to happen. Reggie McKenzie needs this year to work for him. He's probably a general manager that's got the hottest seat of any person. He's wasted draft picks. He's had very few good ones, with being Khalil Mack last year out of Buffalo. That kid is a dynamite defensive player.
You're also forgetting who the Raiders' owner is. It's Al Davis's kid, who is probably a carbon copy of his old man, never shows any patience, always has to do things on impulse when the sky is falling. That's no way to operate a team at all.
But at least they get a guy that has had coaching experience. 2003, 2011, Del Rio was the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. 2 playoff appearances during that tenure, even though they lost in the wild card round. But I think things could turn around for this Oakland team. They have been to the playoffs since they lost in Super Bowl, I believe it was 38 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Rex Ryan goes from 6 years with the Jets to the Buffalo Bills in upstate New York, and Todd Bowles takes over for Rex Ryan with the New York Jets.
It's a great move for both teams. Rex Ryan, he really did all he could with the Jets. Was off to a pretty good start after a couple of years, but after that, things just went downhill for him. Todd Bowles was exactly the guy that the Jets needed to patrol the sidelines, just like Mike McCagnon was exactly the guy that they needed to be their general manager. They've improved so much defensively. Now, if they can do something about quarterback, specifically get rid of Geno Smith and get a real quarterback, the Jets can be actually taken seriously for a change.
What I like about what Todd Bowles brings to the picture, he's going to bring back a secondary. He's going to improve the secondary, especially with the fact they had a franchise low of 6 interceptions last year. That's why they brought in Darrelle Revis. That's why they brought in Antonio Cromartie, Buster Screen, and Gilchrist. This is also a team that offensively could get better with the addition of Brandon Marshall. And you got Quincy Nua, who we're going to see play, along with Jeremy Curley, who you put in the slot. You got a running back in Chris Ivory, who was a dynamite on the field, had over 800 rushing yards on the ground. And as for Rex Ryan, he's a defensive guy. He's got a defense that was great last year. In the top 5, number 1 in sacks with 54, top 3 in yards given up, and in points. Like this, he's got a monster defensive line that he never really had in Marcel Darius, Mario Williams, and Williams. And it's just and Jerry Hughes. This is going to be great. Now, in terms of coaches, there's always hot seats. To look out for. I'm going to give you off these names. After I say these names, which one do you think is the most likely to get fired? Joe Philbin with the Dolphins, Mike Pettin, Cleveland Browns, Marvin Lewis, Cincinnati Bengals, Gus Bradley for the Jaguars, Tom Coughlin with the Giants, John Gruden with the Redskins, Sean Payton with the Saints, Ron Rivera with the Panthers, Jeff Fisher with the Rams. Who do you think?
Jay Gruden with the Redskins, I think, is definitely on the hot seat. And you consider who the owner is at the Redskins, it's Dan Snyder, a guy who's never shown any patience whatsoever. Joe Philbin, I would say, is in more of a hot seat with the Dolphins than Jay Gruden is with the Redskins, because the Dolphins have bankrolled a lot of this season in Ndamukong Suh. If the Dolphins don't get it done this year, Philbin's a goner.
They haven't made the playoffs since 2008.
Do you know how many times the Dolphins have made the playoffs in the last 15 years?
Twice.
Once. Once in 14 years, once in 14 years have the Dolphins participated in a playoff game. That is no way to try and make any friends with the fan base in South Florida, a sagging fan base at that.
I think we're going to see Gus Bradley fired this year. Reason why, Jacksonville, for years, we've been hearing, it's a developing team. It's developing. They're going to get better for next year. This has to be their next year. If it does not work out for Gus Bradley, if Blake Bortles does not show why they spent a draft pick 2 years ago, last year on him, if they don't have the receivers to really throw to, if TJ Yeldon doesn't become that premier back they're looking for, and if their defense doesn't improve and employ that Seattle Seahawks defense that they are trying to get, if things don't go well, Shad Khan, I think, will can Gus Bradley if they don't get more than 5 wins. And as for Mike Pettin, with the fact that he's the 9th head coach since they come back into the league in '99, they've had 22 starting quarterbacks. They were 7-4 last year, and they lost the last 5 games to go 7-9.
To be honest with you, I don't think Mike Pettin's really getting a fair shake. You also have to consider the Browns probably have one of the more incompetent ownership groups in the entire sporting industry, not just the NFL. This is a franchise that's played 1 playoff game since they came back to the league 16 years ago. This is another place where careers go to die.
Well, like I said, why do you think we have so many starting quarterbacks? I can name a few of them. Trent Dilfer being one of them. Jason Campbell. Believe me, the list goes on and on. I would need 2 shows to talk about all these starting quarterbacks. It's just a very contentious situation for me. And
20 starting quarterbacks in 16 years. What does that tell you?
What about Jeff Fisher, though, in St. Louis? He could potentially get the axe, too. The fact they traded Sam Bradford to Philadelphia. They got Nick Foles, a guy who's made 13 out of his last 16 starts.
I actually think that's a good move that the Rams made, because how much longer were they going to hope for Sam Bradford to even be healthy for 16 games, much less have a good 16 games?
Believe me, the Rams have a good defense. That's not even in question. It's their offense that's in question. So Nick Foles has to answer that question. Will he be the premier guy, since they gave him another 2-year extension before he made his first regular season snap for the team? If things do not work out, and the fact that they've only sold a third of their tickets for the regular season, then this team could be moving to Carson.
Yeah. They could only sell 1/3 of their season tickets in total. This team's going to L.A.
All right. Now that we talked about some of the news and there's plenty others, but it would take too many shows to do it. Let's get into week 1, starting last night between the Steel Curtain Steelers going up against the defending Super Bowl 49 champion New England Patriots in Foxborough.
As if the Patriots didn't put themselves in enough controversy, what happens last night? There was suddenly some bleeding going on in the Steelers' radio headsets, to the point where they were actually getting the Patriots' radio broadcast in their headsets. And as it turns out, they wound up shutting down the headsets and the radio signals on each side. But if I'm Mike Tomlin, I have every right to be angry, because he was really furious with what happened last night.
And on top of that, the Patriots were hearing the Steelers too. It was vice versa. So you can't go and assume that it was the Patriots. I know, yes, the fact that it happened with the Patriots, Deflategate, Spygate, let's automatically assume that the Patriots were at fault. But the NFL actually made a statement admitting that they were at fault, and they also had some weather issues because it was raining that day with Gillette Stadium in their communications. Mm-hmm. That's what brought about the problem. They rectified it. It was fixed. I would leave it at that, but of course, the anti-Patriot, anti-Brady fans will never leave it. They will keep on this until the end of the season. So, anyway, the Patriots, though, they came out, they won 28-21, 4 touchdowns for Tom Brady, 3 of which went to Rob Gronkowski.
Well, this just goes to show you how immune the Patriots are to outside distractions. And it also just goes to show you how well-oiled of a machine that Patriot offense is. Tom Brady, except for maybe one play where he overthrew Julian Edelman on what should have been a 5th touchdown pass, Brady looked masterful. I only saw the most of the first half, so I didn't get a chance to see much of the second half. But then again, I really didn't have to. Brady continues to defy age. He's going to turn 37 years old, actually 38 years old coming up, and he looks 10 years younger. I mean, it's amazing how he's still able to throw the ball with such accuracy, and the offenses that they were running, those quick pass plays and the screen passes and everything else.
Oh, yeah.
This is exactly why the Patriots are going to be a force to be reckoned with once again in the AFC.
But you also have to account for, in the first Pittsburgh drive, everything was going right for them up until they decided on 1st and 10 inside the Patriots territory to go for a trick play with Antonio Brown trying to throw the ball, gets tackled for a loss of 8 yards by Malcolm Brown, the rookie that the Patriots acquired in the draft at Texas. And then during that similar drive, Staten Island's own Dominic Easley unfortunately goes down with a hip injury, the 3rd injury to plague his football career.
Yeah.
He's had a history of 2 ACL injuries in both his legs when he was with the Florida Gators, t-shirt that I'm wearing.
Mm-hmm.
And now we could be seeing yet another railroad to his career. But you know what? Overall, despite what happened in that instance, the rest of this game was great for the Patriots to start this way. Also count for the Steelers not having Le'Veon Bell for the first 2 games, Martavis Bryant out for the 4 games, and just a lot, and that interception from Duron Harmon in the 3rd quarter that really was the game changer when the Patriots are up 28-14.
Mm-hmm.
Next game for the Steelers is at home against 49ers, and the Patriots go on the road to Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's get into the regular season. Let's give our quick picks for the regular season. Starting in the neighborhood, Giants heading to Dallas, Jerry World on Sunday night. Cowboys have won the last 4 straight games in this series.
And this is such an important beginning to the season for the Giants. That schedule is looking killer by the moment. And Eli Manning just got himself a brand new fat contract, 4 years, $84 million, and he's going to get $65 million guaranteed. And I think he's supposed to be getting $35 million in signing bonuses. So now we know that he's going to be finishing his career in New York, but this also proves he really has to own up to this contract if he wants to have any success and win another Super Bowl down the road. But there's also the other issues. A running game that continues to be suspect. An offensive line that is equally suspect.
But look at the players they acquired. Eric Flowers. That's going to be interesting to see him, the starting left tackle out of Miami. And then, losing Will Beatty to injury. That's terrible in itself. But you do have Odell Beckham Jr.,
Yeah.
who played almost all